Application Security Weekly delivers interviews and news from the worlds of AppSec, DevOps, and all the other ways people find and fix software flaws. Join us as we explore how the latest news highlights modern security practices or reminds us of the missing ones. We also bring insights from interviews on topics from training to threat modeling, from open source tools to cloud-native techniques, plus an occasional reference from new wave to synthwave. Find us at securityweekly.com/subscribe or look for Application Security Weekly wherever you pick your podcasts.
Welcome back, everyone, to Paul's Security Weekly. Quick announcement before we get started. You are invited to InfoSec World 2024 at Disney's Coronado Springs Resort in Lake Buena Vista, Florida, from September 23rd through the 25th. Join top cybersecurity experts for this premier event. Save 25% on your pass by using the code ISW24-SW25 when you register at securityweekly.com/InfoSecWorld 2024. Don't miss out on this exclusive opportunity. Mr. Lee Neely has joined us. Lee, welcome.
Hey, it's great to be here. Happy Wednesday evening, and hopefully life is wonderful on your side of the planet.
Yes, life is wonderful. You know, one thing that's wonderful is Amazon Prime Day.
Oh, yeah.
So we talked about 3D printing for hackers, and I know Prime Day has ended, and we probably should have done this before Prime Day, but like I didn't do the Prime Day thing until Prime Day, so maybe for next year or whatnot. But what I did for Prime Day, and I wasn't like
it's not fit for polite consumption.
I know I wasn't like excited about it. I didn't want to spend any money. But then I realized that I could go through my saved items. Like, you know, when you get to your cart, and you're like, I really don't want that, and I'm going to save it for later. And then you also have wish lists. You can go through all of those, and any item you have on there, if it's on sale on Prime Day, it'll show up. And Josh and I had this moment, was really funny earlier this week. We're like, did you see the? It was like we were in each other's heads.
The Zima board.
I saw that, and so today I did buy one. I did because Zima boards are normally $250. I bought the Zima board 832 single board router for $186 plus tax.
I bought the NAS package for $206.
Okay, but that's normally a lot more than that.
Normally about $300. Yeah.
So my thing was I'm looking for a new firewall for the studio, and I'm all over the map. I did a lot of research, like as we do when we buy things, right? Like we do a lot of research. Sometimes you do a whole bunch of research and you don't buy anything, and you're just like, well, if I were to buy something, it would be that. And okay, I feel better now, but I'm not going to buy it right now. But then Prime Day sometimes changes that, and I'm like, well, for $186, I'm like, I'm just going to use my own either PFSense or. So now the next thing is like, what firewall operating system am I going to put on it? Is it going to be OpenWRT? Is it going to be PFSense? Is it going to be OpenSense? Is it going to be one of the other variants that I was reading about today? And so that's why I bought it, Josh, was I want a new firewall for here in the studio because the ones we have are crusty, and I have to do a bunch of work with them anyway. And
wait. Are those still the ones in the old Nokia phone cases and stuff?
No, the firewalls are, and there was a bunch of these on sale as well, but they're the fanless mini PCs.
Oh, nice.
So, you know, the whole case is a heatsink kind of thing. Mine came from the Chinese company Kotom. I think they all probably are made in the same factory in China, right? They just spit them out under different brand names. And then you can get more like brand name ones, like Protectly is one. But when the Zima board went on sale, it has two Ethernets on board, right? Gigabit Ethernet adapters built into it. And so I'm like, you know what? I'm going to use one of those.
Do you want a 60p?
What's that?
Do you just want a FortiGate? I've got one I'm not using.
I thought I saw that recommendation today. You can get larger firewall companies, Juniper, Fortinet, any of them, Sonicwall, right? They all make their like smallest model, and I'm like, I don't know, I want the control, right? And I do want ubiquity, but the cost is pretty significant, right? It's a significant uptick to get the Dream Machine Pro, right? It's like $379. And I'm like, I should listen to Tyler and I should get one of those. I'm like, but I think I can check all the boxes and accomplish my goals with it. $186 for a Zima board.
And 10
And the
hours
other
of my
thing-
time.
You're right. It's experience, I guess. Then we talk about it on the show, Josh. I guess it becomes
Valid.
content at that
Technical
point.
segment.
It's a
Hey,
technical
remember
segment.
the Firewall A?
Yeah. Yep. Firewalls. Those are
That-
good too.
They're on Prime for 19% off, so $194. And
So I don't know. I was kind of like, I know Mike Kershaw, developer of Kismet, is a big fan of the Zima boards.
Mhm.
Oh, yeah.
And so Josh and I bought one. So I was
Oh,
like,
cool.
So is Busy Signal, who has the coolest war driving rig I've ever seen.
oh yes, I follow him on Instagram. I follow him, and we occasionally like write comments to each other on Instagram. Great person. I want to meet him in person someday.
Oh, he's a
Yeah,
great guy.
yeah,
Come to John Con. He's always at John Con in Philly.
neat.
Oh, when is that?
Crap, if I remember. I'll have to look now. Now you made me look.
All right, send that to me when you. Are you going to that?
I go because like Russ is a buddy of mine and he runs it, and it's an amazing conference. And apparently now I'm speaking at it, so I didn't know that. And then all of a sudden I was, hey, do you want to be on a panel at John Con? Okay.
Okay, let me know when that is, because if you're there, I'm there. We should collaborate more in conferences. Anyway,
I'd like that.
Also, I got on Prime Day, I saw this Raspberry Pi 0W basic starter kit, right? So Raspberry Pi 0W base cost for just the board should be around $16. This kit from Villaros is usually the Villaroses and Canikits of the world are usually like really price gouged, like you're paying way more than you would for just buying the board and the pieces individually. I
Mhm.
feel. So this kit was originally $50. It was on sale for $23.99. So you get the Raspberry Pi 0W, you get a pinout header, a heat sink, a camera cable, a case with 3 different tops to it. So
Mhm.
depending on like what you want to do, a power supply, an HDMI adapter, and a USB adapter for $23.99.
Damn.
I was like, you know what? I can't pass this up. Like, I got to get one of these. I got to put Kali Linux on it, and I just go throw it in my bag because I might need it someday, right? Like,
very cool.
Yeah, there's a kid there, at least holding it up, right?
Nice.
That's
There we go.
Wait, how much is that?
$23.99
dude.
Is it still available?
It is
in my time zone.
Yep. So I thought that was like a no-brainer kind of deal. Have some of that stuff.
I grabbed some new TP-Link Deco.
What is a deco?
Access points? They're like,
okay.
it's a residential grade access point. I've used them for years. I like them a lot. I like the configuration.
Yeah,
you know.
it's funny you say that, Dave. I think I was showing you or mentioned to you that I'm using the TP-Link. Now people are going to come and hack the studio, but I'm using the TP-Link Kazaa,
Yeah,
the
I've got a
home
few of
automation
those.
stuff.
Yeah.
Because look, yes, I know I could do something better, something more open source. I could spend a lot more time, to your point, Josh, configuring it all myself, using what is the open source one, Homebrew. We get
Home Assistant.
Home Assistant.
Yeah,
Thank
Home
you.
Assistant. Yeah.
I could use Home Assistant, and I probably should be using Home Assistant, and I want to, but like I only have so much time in the day, and I have so many projects I want to get to, and I have to things have to be prioritized, right?
Oh man.
And
no
so,
joke.
but to get automation here at home and in the studio, I'm using the TP-Link Kazaa stuff. And so like all the lights here in the studio are now controlled with the TP-Link Kazaa. So
they really called it Kazaa because I had a flashback to Napster.
I know, right?
Kasa,
Kasa,
actually.
yeah, Kasa.
Oh, okay. Because
K-A-S-A,
Kazaa,
yeah.
LimeWire, Napster. I'm like,
Right.
oh my God,
I think
is it
I
the
might
90s?
say Kazaa as like a throwback because I'm used to saying that term, Josh. It's funny you say that. So a lot of that stuff was also on sale. I mean, I use the cameras. You can get like a 1080p camera that does recording, that does pan, tilt, zoom for like $23.99.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, it's a crappy little camera, but I have one that I literally like throw on my floor in the kitchen so I can check on my dogs. Right. Like, and I have like one in the hallway here. So like, I know if someone's in the studio. So the other day when like I don't know, it was the power company or something needed access, like I got an alert and I checked in on it, and turns out one of our friends, Joe, was here with them. I was like, oh, okay, cool. Like Joe's with him, like it's totally fine. right? And that camera again was like $25, and I'm like, that's all I need, and it's super easy to set up and configure. Also, it's really funny. Larry sent me this UC-tronics 19-inch 1U rack mount for Raspberry Pis, holds up to 5 Raspberry Pi 5 or 4B boards with an SSD bracket that'll hold any 2.5-inch SSD. When he sent it to me, it was $59.99. On sale on Prime, it was $47.99. And when Larry originally sent it to me, I was like, we should have these things, but like I'm trying to manage a budget for the studio. But I'm like, all right, it just went on sale, and I'm like, okay, now it's a no-brainer, and we should totally just have one of these, right? Because we've got a ton of Raspberry Pis for various things here in the studio. One of which like runs one of the monitors sitting in front of me, which you can't see, but well, Dave can see it, but the audience can't. But it runs. One's got the show notes on it, right? So this one I'm looking at, Dave, with the show notes on it, is a Raspberry Pi 4. And it's USB connected to the. Actually, this is the official Raspberry Pi keyboard that drives it, so I can do show notes and talk about stories and stuff. And so yeah, I bought one of the rack mount things. I'm like, why not? We need one.
So have you made your Raspberry Pi cluster yet?
So it's funny you say that. Larry's got a couple of acrylic cases that he bought for Raspberry Pi clusters, Lee. And they're sitting on our workbench over there. We haven't done anything with it yet. So yeah, a lot of Raspberry Pi projects.
So you can so I forgot what I was going to say. Obviously you can 3D print Raspberry Pi cases all day. One of the things I was reminded of with Prime Day, searching for discount codes has changed from when like that was first a thing. You'd go on Retail Me Not.
Yeah,
it's all over the place. Retail Me Not is garbage
too. Like, try and Google search for like the best of something. I just want to know.
Yeah,
like I want to crowdsource people's experiences with particularly electronic. Let's just limit electronics.
Yeah.
What does everyone think's the best one? It's been totally taken over by spammers, scammers, like what have you, right? I'm kind of considering, do I use ChatGPT for can ChatGPT potentially help me sift through like I want the rundown of the best Linux open source firewall operating system, right? And maybe not best is a
WatchGuard.
It leaves a lot to interpretation, right? Like I want to know like pros and cons of each so I can find the right one for me, right?
I do that with Perplexity all day. So I use Perplexity.
What does your 3D printer do? And
I'm
tuning down, or you?
I told it to print a Mr. Robot bust.
Of sweet
Rami Malek in 50%. I thought that would be a nice addition to the studio. You're just sitting here. You've got awesome, a 3D printer doing nothing.
You're just gonna have to come back every week with 3D printer and just print random shit for the studio. It's so awesome.
So what I've found is Perplexity is really good for having something that can run through different opinions of things and
like make sense of it without the spam or they're literally hacking Google SEO.
Yeah.
Like I feel like Google's lost control of that.
The good thing about this is it cites every source. So I can go through and double check, which source did you get this from? Right. Oh, this random thing on Reddit. Cool. What do I think about this person's opinion?
But like Reddit has a certain weight with me, right? Like, and sometimes Reddit comes up in the results and that has obviously a certain context that we all know. Like it's basically random people's opinions without much filtering or remediation of what people can say. And I appreciate that. I think that's Reddit's thing, and I think it's awesome. But also, like that has a certain ranking in my mind.
Yeah, and then you can see what the source was, compare it to what you're based on your personal opinion of value,
right?
And then you can weigh it, and then it'll give you an output. The other thing I've found is if you're searching for coupon codes, a great place to look is YouTube. So if you actually search YouTube for the thing you're going to buy and type in the word coupon code, often it'll be in the show notes or the transcript, and they'll drop that right in there. So when I was buying those TP-Link access points, I did that and I saved an additional 10% off of the purchase.
It's awesome because stuff is so expensive now. I think finding deals we buy a lot of stuff as hackers.
Well, I mean,
right? I mean,
you got to feed.
look at the
It's
four
not
of
because
us.
we're
Like,
hackers, it's
feed
because
the-
we
we're
need
ha-
shopping retail therapy is important to us.
we need
Yeah.
stuff. I mean, we could do a whole segment on AliExpress.
Oh, don't
Oh,
don't
dude,
talk
it's
about
just
Temu or AliExpress because it's just effing dangerous.
I haven't
Okay.
done a lot of Temu. I don't know.
Oh
I'm a
my!
little.
Actually, they have
The thing is, so the
surprisingly
problem I
good
have with
woodworking
Temu,
tools.
but the problem I have with Temu is it wants me to really install the app, and the
How many
fact
old
that it
phones do
really
you have?
wants me to install the app. Yeah.
How many
okay,
old phones do you have?
I have a lot of old phones.
All right, so
That's
shut
one of
up
our
and install
stories
the
this
app.
week. So, but that's a great point. Actually, transitions
Oh.
nicely into one of our stories. Is someone from
Oh, we
Black
should do
Hills.
stories. Is this the news?
Oh, this is the news. Yeah. Well, we started off talking about buying stuff, which I think is important for our audience because our audience are hackers like us. And we've got a lot of stuff we need to buy.
Somebody
I mean,
from Black Hills. Do we know anybody over there?
I know,
Paul?
right?
Do we happen to?
We know. I know a lot of people. Over there.
I said, do we only know some people over there? We know a lot.
I love my
We know
Black
pretty
Hills
much all
friends.
of them over there.
Kinda.
I mean, Black Hills is doing well. Secure Ideas just hired a new pen tester. Trusted Sec is. Who do you want to talk about?
Oh, I have a binary defense story as well. Well, let's cover the Black Hills. My good friend John Strand founded Black Hills several years ago. John and I have we just have like a storied history together. We haven't seen each other or talked in a while, but it's one of those friendships where we don't have to talk every day, kind of thing. Right? It's great. But John hired someone who is Connor Constigan. And I want to say Connor is like a developer. I don't think Connor's job at Black Hills. He's an intern. Oh, so he was an intern and now he's a web application developer. But Connor has this. Well, it says it right here. He's like, I'm a web developer and here at BHAS, but I also love hacking phones. I'm like, dude, we need to hang out, right? And then he goes on to talk about Lineage OS
Nice.
and how to get that on your Android device. And so I've done a Lineage OS install and a Kali Net Hunter install. To your point, Josh, on my older Android phones, and sifted through back to our Google conversation, right? Like tens of articles and had to like read them and find them and like make my own notes to develop what would be my path on this particular phone to get to where I need to be to get Kali Net Hunter on it or to get Lineage OS on it. And sometimes that changes. Sometimes I'm like, this phone, like it's not even possible to do this thing. So I got to switch to doing this other thing on this phone to try and do something with it. So I've got an affinity for Android and hacking stuff. And so when I read Connor's post, it's spot on. So if you're like many of us and you've got a drawer or bin full of old Android, old is like pull that out of context, right? Like Android phones that aren't your current Android phone. I don't recommend you do this on your current Android phone. Much like a conversation about Temu and some of these apps. Like I've also got a gimbal that came from a Chinese company, and the app is like super sketchy, and I don't put that on my regular phone. So there's great use cases also for like hacking stuff too. Like NetHunter is pretty cool. Lineage is really cool. Android alternative to Google. If you don't want all the Google crap on your phone or all the Samsung crap on your phone, I don't know if you can do this on the Samsung. I don't know which ones they support. You can go look on the Lineage OS website and see which phones are supported. Grab one of those phones, follow Connor's guide here, and get Lineage on your phone. You're gonna have to do things like unlock your bootloader. Like there's scary stuff. Like be prepared to have things go sideways. And there are certain times where like I'm holding the phone and I'm like, it's a brick right now and I got to recover it. But this is good. I think it's good hacker experience, right? You should go play around with this stuff. And so Connor put together a great guide and offer some great insight. Like a lot of the things in Connor's article are things that he explains really well, like fast boot, an ADB in the bootloader. Connor does a great job of describing it, which will save you the time, like I did, to have to go read 3 or 4 different articles about those things in order to understand, like, wait, what is this? What do I have to do with it? How does it play into, how I accomplish my goals? So it's a great article. It is my story number 4. how to install Lineage OS on your Android device. If you're just getting into especially Android kind of hacking or customizing or hacking an older Android phone, this is a great place to start.
So if you want to do a scary comparison between what AI can do and then what was written by a human, do you want to see what the output was?
Yes.
In what context?
So I just told Perplexity to write a detailed guide on installing and using Lineage OS on Android phones. And it looks like it did a fantastic job. Like here, I'll show you the output right here. So here's where, when I need to crash course something, where this comes in handy. So here's the pro search function. It's asking for several different things, and it's going to combine these 4 pieces together. It shows me where it got the data from. So it combined a bunch of different things. So it's going to search for information about Lineage OS. It'll interpret that, and then it'll look for instructions on how to install it.
Yep.
Then instructions how to use it.
Instructions are pretty good.
And then compile it all into a guide, right? It's got 4 different steps. Here's the answer. What is it? Benefits, installation guide. Here are the prereqs.
Device, computer, USB cable.
Which models, what we just saw. Unlock the bootloader.
It's missing. You need ADB and fast boot utilities.
Let's
you
see.
have to install those on your operating system.
There's twerp. Hold on.
You need that. Yes.
You're right. It doesn't include ADB.
Yeah, you gotta install the right tool. I basically have it like as part of my standard Linux build for my computers.
Right.
I'm installing ADB in the tools because I usually have some kind of Android device that I'm looking at it at any given time, so I keep those tools installed on it.
So if you,
I think Fastboot comes with the ADB. It depends on what operating system you're installing and even which Linux distribution, right? But you want to make sure you got the ADB tool, the Fastboot tool.
There we go.
Yeah, Android Developer SDK includes that. Yeah, and it's going to be different depending on like on Linux. What does it say for Linux? Unlock the bootloader is important.
So I will, if I notice something missing, I'll heckle Perplexity and say, do it again, but better. And in this case, I gave it that feedback and then it included it.
Android SDK. So for Debian Ubuntu systems, Android, what did it say? Android SDK platform tools. Yeah. And that's going to vary depending on which Linux distro. And that should give you both ADB and Fastboot. But then your what did you say, twerp or whatever it is?
Yeah.
That's like an image. Yeah. That's an image that you're going to download, right? And use Fastboot to, and I want to say twerp, is it a bootloader? Recovery.
Yeah.
I forget the exact process, but I've only done it like basically twice. Once for Lineage and once for calling NetHunter.
So whatever you do, Paul, don't look at the list of supported devices. I think too many of your devices are on there. They're not that old.
It's a pretty good list. Yeah, and a lot of them are newer.
That's what I meant.
Yeah, and a lot of them you can buy in AliExpress.
Of
my
course.
advice is, and I have this. If anyone's interested, feel free to contact me. I have
too many devices that it needs to get rid of.
Yeah, but like you go through, like if you want to do Lineage, you look at their supported devices and you can find like the least expensive but pretty capable device that you can go on AliExpress and buy. My latest one, I forget which one it was. I think it was one of the Xiaomi devices, and it was like $50. And I think that's shipped to get an Android device that can run Lineage. And if you just hack around and stuff, like that's a great price point to have just like a hackery Android phone that you can put random apps on.
Was it like a Poco phone or?
No, I've got a small little tiny one that was probably even half that cost. That's purple. That's pretty awesome. But that one has a
Pine phone somewhere.
Yeah, Pine phone is an open platform, which is nice. But Pine phones are kind of pricey comparatively to ones I'm talking about.
I got it for like $100 from somebody. And
yeah, okay. So I mean, it's still double than the phone that I was finding on.
No, but it's useless. It doesn't actually work as a phone. Minor problem.
Right. Yeah. So also the thing with this, closing thoughts on this story, like your daily driver, that you got to install all your apps on, and you need Google to like do stuff on, and then you want to plug it in your car and have Android Auto work and all that stuff.
Yeah.
You want like a real phone.
Yeah.
Right. Then you then go buy all the other stuff or on eBay or like wherever you get it, right, and do the cheap stuff and do your hacking stuff. Don't like your regular main phone. Don't do any of that crap on it because you can brick it.
Kind of, sort of.
Okay, where do we want to go?
Yeah, you want to talk about AT&T?
I do.
Yeah.
That's my stories 5 and 6. I didn't notice if they were in your list.
Is this the Snowflake breach? Was AT&T part of the Snowflake breach?
Yes, indeed.
That was the story, right?
Yeah.
There was a podcast I think that talked about finding like an old commercial from someone from like predicted this would happen because AT&T has so much information, and they kind of predicted they would partner with like a third party that helped them. Snowflake basically helps you manage and curate your data. Is that an accurate statement? Sort of.
It's a data management system. Yeah. I mean, that's valid.
Yeah.
I mean,
and they
it's a data
predicted
lake.
that their third party would get hacked and basically give attackers access to all this data.
So the difference is that what happened is AT&T had an account with a reasonable password and that got compromised. Yeah, exactly. The eye roll from Josh is perfect.
Right? Like it just comes down to authentication.
Right.
Josh's reaction is classic though.
Yeah, and in fact, that's the thing Snowflake's saying about all these guys is like, dude, you didn't turn on multi-factor authentication. You needed to do that, but it was kind of a pain in the ass in Snowflake, but it was totally possible to set it up from the get-go that way. And I
guarantee you, it is faster to set up multi-factor authentication on a stone fucking tablet than it is to clean up this mess.
Oh, it's worse. Did you catch my story number 6?
You're talking about the Bitcoin?
Oh, they paid a ransom for this.
They
right?
paid a guy to go delete the data. A buddy of the guy who took it.
I want to be really clear on this. They paid someone to show them a video that they deleted data.
Yes.
Yes. Excuse me. Yes, that's what they paid him to do. Whether the data is deleted.
Of that I deleted the data.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
not I, like me, Paul.
He made a copy or not, you fucking idiots.
That's the most ludicrous thing I've in all of the data breaches we've ever covered.
Sorry to set your hair on fire, dude.
Artifacts and facts we've covered on data breaches. That has to be one of the most freaking ridiculous.
I mean, like,
I agree.
Like this is like when your mom would come into your room, stop reading books. All right, Mom, I'll turn the flashlight off and stop reading. And she closed the door and the flashlight goes back on.
Well, I mean, think about it. This guy originally wanted $1 million to do the data deletion, and he settled for $380,000. Yeah. You're going to get the same results at a third price.
Always haggle.
I think he should have stood his ground at $1 million.
Yeah, but anyway,
or just turn around and you could just sell the data for $1 million.
Yeah, could have sold the data for a lot more than a fucking million because can you imagine
when
they found out how many times you were making calls to that 1-900 number. Okay?
Or as an evil bad person, I can get money from AT&T and I can tell them that I deleted the data, and then I can go sell it to someone else for $1 million, and then I'm $1,380,000 richer.
Yeah. Well, it depends on what you're prepared for. So if you don't have an ecosystem where you can fence that data and turn it into something else easily, then it becomes really attractive to cash out really quickly, or do both.
Yeah.
You know,
but they're just going to sell it. But
so
what is the data? What is the data? Is it? Are we going to get a lot more spam? Are we going to get a lot of spam calls?
It's call and text records. It's like NetFlow. It doesn't have the actual call content or the SMS content, but it's got the who.
My question on this
and where
is if I use Signal. Is that data still there?
No, because it's actually call and text SMS.
Right.
So it should not be there.
Because Signal doesn't ride on top. And I apologize for not.
It's on the data
stream. For not knowing this.
Signal rides on data, not on your cell.
Yeah. Okay. So I got you.
So if you turn off mobile data but leave your cell phone, your cell phone antenna rolling, you can't use Signal.
I mean, even if you just had an encrypted.
So Signal
SMS.
is independent of SMS.
Yes,
correct.
That's correct.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Ditto.
Again, and yet so Thomas Tacek is one of our guests coming up, and he is one of the hosts, amazing hosts on security, cryptography, whatever. Thomas also has a storied history in the hacking scene and computer security. We've had him on the show years ago. So I'm excited to have him back. But one of the things they do talk about is the Signal protocol, and it kind of comes down to like when other people create air quotes secure messaging protocols, they're like the reference to whether it's secure is it how does it compare to Signal
Right.
kind of thing. And there's a lot of details in there, and those folks on that show know all those details. So I'm very excited to pick Thomas's brain and then hopefully get some of the other hosts on that show on our show as well, because I'm a super huge fan of that show. Have I worn my T-shirt? I have a T-shirt from Security Cryptography whatever
Nice.
podcast. That's how much of a fan
We
I
all
am
need
of the show.
we all need enabled 2FA t-shirts. I have one at home. I can bring that next time.
I have a T-shirt that says "I pee in pools," which when you're going to a pool party
Mhm.
is so much fun to wear. Like the looks that you get are just
There we go.
Yes. Yes.
enable MFA. This is the way. Hashtag enable MFA. This is the way with the Mandalorian. I'll just call it generic Mandalorian helmet. I
Sort
won't
of,
say if it's it does have the antenna, which indicates it's likely an homage to Boba Fett that has because the antenna is on there. It flips down into an eyepiece for the
Gary
rocket
Reimer sent me
launcher on the
this. It's sitting,
yeah.
it sits here always because
Mhm.
I can't tell you how much of my life is. Do you have MFA turned on? No, that's why you're
Also-
stupid.
Off-topic question, but related to Star Wars. Has anyone watched season 1 of The Acolyte?
No.
That's a huge
I
Star Wars fan.
tried to. I couldn't even get through the first episode. I
Whoops.
didn't get it. I know a lot of people like it. It didn't make sense to me.
The first like minute and a half of the first episode is freaking amazing. Just throwing that out there.
Really?
Does a pretty good job of catching your attention in the first minute and a half, in my opinion.
How's the rest of it?
It takes a lot of twists and turns, and I'm not the Star Wars hater, right? Like I don't hate any of the Star Wars content because I love Star Wars so much that I can't find it in my being and in my soul to hate any of the Star Wars related content because
No.
I grew up with Star Wars and I love Star Wars so much.
Yeah.
I do have content that I like better than others.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think any of it is like truly horrible.
I think if there's
Even the newer stuff.
there,
Although
I think there's stuff I
Rise of
didn't get
Sky-
into, but that doesn't mean I hate it.
Rise of Skywalker though might be one of the ones where I'm like, man, they really missed the mark on that one, right? And at that I don't even really dislike the film. I just that one's kind of really low on my list. Acolyte is probably
Yeah.
like somewhere in between, but again, like a lot of people trashed it, like Rotten Tomatoes kind of thing,
Oh,
and
they-
like
they
many
trashed
of
it
us listening are
I
like many of us are Star Wars nerds and they trash it hard, and I don't. So the Acolyte, I don't believe deserved that level of treatment. I think there's some issues with it, but there's also some like really super freaking shining moments in that show, like the very last 10 seconds of the last episode in the season is just if you're not like I was literally like this, like yay at the last 10 seconds. If you're not a Star Wars fan, if you're not excited at the last 10 seconds of episode 8 of season 1 of The Acolyte, you're just not. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I've been pleasantly surprised and then like surprisingly disappointed by things that I thought I was going to like and or vice versa. So new TV shows, new movies. I thought I was going to love Furiosa, and I didn't like it.
Stick to Star Wars.
You
then.
know,
we're talking Star Wars.
we can. But anyway, long story short, there's been a bunch of things that have come out lately that either I thought I was going to hate them and then end up loving the TV show, and then vice versa. I thought I was really going to enjoy Acolyte, and I maybe I'll go back at some point.
Give it a chance. Give it a chance.
I got through like 20 minutes, and it just the writing, the story just didn't connect with me for some reason.
Okay. That's cool.
Moving on.
Mhm.
I don't want to.
Speaking of MFA, Lee's number 2 story.
So Singapore Banks has been using SMS as a two-factor for like a while now. Something I said it 2 decades. And they're switching from SMS to a mobile app, as in the Google Authenticator kind of app. I mean, not phishing resistant, but a pretty big move, because you get away from the smishing attacks, right? Or where people clone your phone and you get the text over to another device that's not yours. And they're saying they're moving there because there's enough penetration of mobile devices in their area that they can actually count on the user having a mobile device, which I thought was kind of neat. Although, like I said, I'd like to see them raise the bar higher, like passkeys or something. But considering this is a bank and you're talking your average member or customer user, that's kind of cool.
I mean, I think that's a really mature choice.
Mhm.
I'm really looking forward to more banks following suit. I'm starting to see some changes, but sending me a text to verify is just that it's
Yeah, I
2024.
think moving away from the SMS, I mean, we just established with Signal, right?
Yeah.
Moving away from the SMS,
Oh yeah,
it basically wipes out a whole attack surface.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, it's a different attack surface, but it wipes out what in my mind is a much richer attack surface that opens you up to attacks that don't that are outside of your control. Like every time I go to an AT&T store, I kind of make it a point to weave in the conversation the SIM swapping attacks. And
that's
it's
the word I was
interesting.
looking for.
SIM swap, right? But it's really fascinating, and it rejuvenates my spirit as an information security professional, that over the years, like when I first started having these conversations years ago, it was kind of like, oh, really? Like that's a thing? Or yeah, we're just starting to get training. Like I've heard of that too. Now when I have the conversation, they're like, oh yeah, Mr. Asadoran, we're totally like hyper aware of that problem. We've gotten tremendous amounts of training on it.
Yeah.
But even still today, I see them then, like I have that conversation with them and they'll like literally walk away and like leave their tablet on the table. Like, come on, I'm like, please don't do that. Like, don't do that. Like I literally just told you, one of the attacks is someone's going to walk out of the store with the tablet. Now, I'm not sure if they've improved their defenses against that. Right. But there's a time, like if you listen to Darknet Diaries has done a couple of episodes on this, and like literally one of the attacks is someone goes in and swipes the tablet, and they know they like basically have an hour to SIM swap as many numbers as possible. And good Lord, in an hour, you can SIM swap a whole ton of people, right? Because there's people just wait. It's a whole chain. Like there's people waiting.
Yeah.
Right. And so this is what I believe has invalidated SMS. But the carriers have gotten better.
No, they
but
haven't.
still need to remain, but they need to remain diligent. So you missed the second part of my comment there, Josh, before you jumped in. They have to remain diligent, right?
They're
you
not.
have to still. No, it depends on your carrier, right?
No, it doesn't. Let me be clear. It does not. Let me be more clear. When was the last time you went to a cell phone store?
Few months.
Okay.
Interesting. So it's interesting though. The past few times I've been, 2 times I've been to a cell phone store, was to do something specific, like I had to be in the store to do.
Right.
And the person that I talked to, 2 different people at 2 different locations, both said I want to get into cybersecurity. And like I literally was like writing stuff down for them for like resources. I'm like, you should listen to our podcast. You should check out like these resources. Like, here's my email. Like, you have my phone number, so like just text me, dude. Like I do. Like I'm here to help.
Here's my question
it's
to you.
kind of ironic, but anyway.
Whatever carrier it was, did you go to a carrier store or an authorized retailer of the carrier store?
It was it was a carrier store.
That's unusual. It's about 10 times as likely, roughly, that you're going to go to an authorized retailer of the carrier store. In other words,
I stopped going. Right, I agree. That's almost like a supply chain attack.
Well, it kind of is, because they have full access to all of the tools and all of the pieces of the actual carrier stores, and yet they're not background checked by the carrier. They're not they're not.
I want to say back in the day, there was a lot of stores that were like a cell phone store, like now it's Best Buy, but there was a lot more independence back in the day. They were like, hey, you can come to us, and like you can pick your carrier and pick your phone, and we'll help you with that. And to your point, Josh, the carrier is kind of they were like a downstream supplier.
Right. But
and they
But
had
now
access to
you
all
walk
that
into a store
information.
that says AT&T, and in little tiny letters it goes authorized retailer.
Yeah.
yes,
And
yes.
they're not AT&T employees. They're
No,
not,
they're not.
Verizon employees. They're not, whatever employees. And so you're getting the access, but the manager's tablet still has access to do SIM swaps.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Correct.
So, I mean, if you were to grab that and drop a bad USB on that, you could really improve your efficiency rather than having to do all that work manually.
That's a good
Pre-
point. I'm not
pre-program
sure.
that.
I've
You
not
don't even have
heard
to
of
do that. The
attack,
average cost
but-
is about $300 or $400 per SIM swap paid to the manager.
Well, yeah, that's the other. So that's the attack that's the most difficult. I see your point now, Josh. That is the attack that's the most. It's my. You want to get in. Someone wants to get into a company. It's really hard to defend against someone drops off a bag of money to the employee
So
and flips them. Right?
most
I mean, it's basically espionage applied to commercial entities, right? Like you're basically bribing an employee, whether they're a downstream
You get a
cellular
username and
store
password
or
for some
right.
company, and you're like, okay, but now that I realize they're using MFA, I'm just going to get the guy's phone from a SIM swap.
Yep.
So the interesting thing here, and I probably need the Josh Wayback Machine as part of this comment, is that 863B, which is about authenticators, says basically SMS is bad and it lists the attack, the SIM swapping attack. What I need Josh's brain for was, I'm trying to remember if that was in the 2017 version or it wasn't there till the 2020 version. But either way, that's a minimum 4 years ago that we got an industry standard says don't do SMS.
Yeah,
I'm
okay,
pretty
but
sure it's in the 17 version.
I
But
think it's in the 17 version as well. I would agree with you, but here's the scary thing. Go to 2fa.directory on your browser, okay?
mhm.
Click on banking, and then look at who has SMS still in there. And the answer is most of them. Okay?
Yeah.
You want to click on gambling? Not many of them do. You know why? Because they don't want to lose money. Banks are insured. They're like, whatever.
Yeah, but cryptocurrency as well. But I think the cryptocurrency fueled this. Well, it did two things.
I'm now in full curmudgeon mode. I apologize.
No, but I like it though, because I think
This is
in the
cool.
cryptocurrency context, I think it really highlighted this attack as valid, because a lot of the cryptocurrency exchanges were using using SMS as a second factor, and that's a really easy attack for an attacker.
Cryptocurrency. Right? It's so easy to lose your money. We'll help you.
Yeah. And it was that's why people got so, I think that's why attackers got so good at SIM swapping, was because the payout was great and they could just go steal someone's crypto wallet and it was over, done with, and very easy and highly unregulated.
Oh,
right?
It's even uglier than you know, and then I can talk about
it. Well, ugly is a great word for it. It's ugly when it comes to cryptocurrency, right?
there are some things you can do to protect yourself. Like you can set up like a passcode intentionally, set your port out pin.
A lot of times they'll social
protection,
engineer
port
their
out
way
protection.
around the pin code. That's why Josh is shaking his head.
It increases the likelihood,
none of
reduces
that
it.
protects you from a insider threat or a complicit employee.
It is insider threat, 100%.
That's the problem.
It is insider threat.
Please, Dave, don't misunderstand me. It is good to do that stuff. Absolutely correct.
You
None
should
of
do
it
that,
protects you against
the insider threat. Right?
But it should.
I shouldn't say insider threat is 100%, but insider threat will do.
But it should protect you. Here's the thing. Why, if I set up a PIN to access my account, okay, and someone comes in and says, "Hey, here's $500. I want you to access Josh's account." $1,000, $10,000, whatever. They shouldn't be able to access the frigging account without my PIN.
Right.
The employee
100%.
shouldn't.
Correct. But they can override that.
Excuse me.
If they have the manager's tablet, they can override it, from what I understand.
That's exactly it. So why is the manager allowed to override it?
They shouldn't be able to.
Bing.
Yeah. I would have
for customer convenience. It's customer service, right?
Yeah, I would put in a multi-stage process for that. Like
you hear the pretext around that, and it happens. But they're testing these pretexts. I mean, I've listened to social engineers go, yeah, that was the pretext, and it's getting better. Like the processes are improving, but to Josh's point, it's still not perfect. I mean, it's never going to be perfect, but it's better than it was, thankfully,
Yeah.
in protecting against these threats.
So in defense of AT&T, as my mom's guardian, I was having to go in and modify her account. And in order, even though I had to have the manager of a company store to do it, the authorized dealer couldn't do it. They still had to call corporate to get a second party involved in the process. Why they don't have something like that in place, as Josh hinted, for the SIM swap, when you can't have the PIN, doesn't make sense. I mean, they already have other processes. They have to phone a friend to get, a 2-person rule, so to speak.
At that point, Lee, would it have been easier to hire a SIM swapper to do that work for you?
Well, of course.
Well, there we go.
There you
But
Now we have a legitimate use for that skill.
go. No,
but
came
I
full
just,
circle.
I was trying to go through the front door, and I was pleased to see that there were controls that I couldn't just bluff my way through it. I mean, I needed to prove a bunch of stuff, which is great.
And that's the problem we run into in cybersecurity. Whenever it's designed under the assumption that people are going to use the thing in a specific way, and that we secure it in that way, like, hey, they're always going to come through the front door. Therefore, all we have to do is secure the front door in the hallway,
No.
and
Go
all they
look
have to
the
do is
window.
Yeah, I
But
was going to say.
but I think I have a lot of stories that talk about some of these preconceived notions, right,
Mhm.
of security, and I think you're pulling on a really great thread. And one of the ones that I have is, I think this also relates to my current train of thinking on local privilege escalation versus remote code execution.
Mhm.
I think some of my stories relate to that too. But this one, and I'm not picking on Sonicwall here. In fact, I think our guest on the next episode or one after is from Sonicwall and really awesome. And so
Mhm.
I'm not picking on Sonicwall. Sonicwall makes hardware and software. It has vulnerabilities like everyone else that makes hardware and software.
Of course.
And so there was an SSD advisory, so ssd-disclosure.com, and they found 2 different vulnerabilities in Sonicwall's SMA 100, and there was a cross-site scripting that led to remote code execution. So this is and so where I'm picking on is the lack of context and visibility that we have as an industry to understand severity and priority of chained vulnerabilities. We tend to assign severity and then a patching priority to individual vulnerabilities. And this is a conversation I had with Wade Baker and Jay Jacobs that are in Jay's data scientists have been looking at this stuff for a long time. And they're like, this is still a problem, Paul, when I brought it up with them as well. Like they've done a lot of research on this, on vulnerability stuff as well as other things, but vulnerability stuff, right? So in this case, in Sonicwall, it's just the example here. Again, we're all in glass houses. I'm not throwing stones. So there's a pre-authentication stored cross-site scripting, which means I don't need to be authenticated to the device, but I can send data to it and it will store, and this happens in the logging functionality of this device.
Mhm.
I can store some code, right? That's executed in the web user interface, right? So that's vulnerability 1.
Mhm.
Vulnerability 2 is a post-authentication remote command injection vulnerability. The combination of these two, like one individually, like pre-stored cross-site scripting is like 1 severity, like I don't know, what is it, maybe a 5 or a 6 on your CVSS scale. A post-authentication is like maybe a 5 or a 6. Not remote, but authenticated command injection. But together, it's a 9 or a 10.
Yeah.
Right? And I'm using CVSS as an example, and I haven't done all the calculate. That's the thing. The scoring mechanisms like CVSS don't lend themselves to the blending of vulnerabilities together.
Yeah.
And I've seen this even in our space at Eclipsium with firmware and BMC stuff, which I've got a couple stories about as well. But I've seen it where I'm like, well, if that vulnerability existed that gave an attacker initial foothold, and you had this other vulnerability, you would gain oh my god, you could do really heinous things as an attacker. The impact would be a 10 out of 10 on whatever scale you want to point it. So all right, so I want to talk about this. So as an attacker, and they wrote an exploit for it. So the exploit is I put the cross-site scripting vulnerability, and it ends up in the logs. When someone logs in to the web user interface, that cross-site scripting vulnerability executes code and basically shovels the user session back to the attacker. Now the attacker has authentication to the device.
Yeah.
With authentication
on.
to the device, the Python script they wrote automatically goes, oh, I can now access this area of the web interface, which gives me command injection, which then shovels a shell back to the attacker. So they actually had, you got to go read the thing. They have this like little animated GIF rather, that does the whole thing and like shows them basically getting shell on the device as a combination of these two things. Now, the vulnerabilities were silently patched without any CVE assignment, which, as we all know, I don't agree with that at all. If there's a vulnerability that exists in software, it doesn't matter how you fix it or when it's fixed or where it's fixed. If there's a vulnerability in a version of software, it should get a CVE.
Yeah.
That's my rule. So for me, this should have been 2 CVEs that are issued, one for the cross-site scripting, one for the command injection. Now, independent of everything else in this article, we don't have a great way to track that. We don't have a great way to score that. We don't have a great way to bubble that to the surface to go, hey, if you're on like this version of whatever software, Sonicwall aside, doesn't matter. This version of software, you've got these 2 vulnerabilities. You don't have 2 CVSS 5.0s. You've got, I don't know how you'd phrase it. You've got you've got something you need to fix.
It's
right?
a reaction. It's like a chemical reaction. You've got sodium metal and you've got water. Water, not so bad. Sodium metal sitting by itself, no big deal. But you combine the two, now you've got something that is greater
I was
than
doing
the sum
some
of the
cleaning
whole.
earlier and thinking about like I have this thing, like I like to make my own cleaning solutions.
Oh, this is great.
Because I have 4 dogs at home,
Yeah.
right? So like I do a lot of cleaning, and I have 3 kids. So 4 dogs and 3 kids, you're cleaning something every day.
Yeah.
And I'm like, cleaning stuff is like expensive. It doesn't really work. And so I got the alcohol, vinegar, baking soda, hydrogen peroxide, and I'm not a chemist, so like I'm using the internet to figure all this out. And like basically the rule of thumb that I learned is that anytime you have bleach, you don't mix it with anything.
No.
Like
No.
bleach is like you use on its own and you don't mix it with anything, right? And it's very similar to vulnerabilities. Like there's certain things you just don't, if you mix together, is really bad,
So
right? And so like cross-site scripting, stored cross-site scripting, pre-authentication, and authenticated command injection are 2 things you shouldn't mix together. If you mix together, that should be a higher score.
yeah, I agree. I've been socializing a few new like we talk about attack chaining all the time. I've been talking about like remediation chaining, so like putting remediation steps together in a particular order, depending on how you do it, can have more efficacy than another way, right? There's a right way
Cool.
to do remediation. With
Well, there's also
vulnerabilities,
remediation that you can wipe out a whole bunch of stuff
yes,
by applying one different patch.
don't do that.
Well,
no, wait.
or do that, right? Or
Oh,
like
in a positive
so
way, yes.
when
Yeah.
I used to work in vulnerability, like I used to work for Tenable, right? And one of the conversations I would have oftentimes is, yeah, the report from your vulnerability management system may say you've got 2,327 vulnerabilities.
Mhm.
I'm like, you're not going to go apply 2,337 patches. I'm like,
No.
what we need to do is we need to distill down that like you're on version 1 of the software and there's version 3 that's available. If you go to version 3, you can wipe out over 2,000 vulnerabilities.
Yeah, exactly.
And I believe the VM platforms and the vulnerability like management stuff like caught on to that and started making recommendations, because we were hyper aware of that in 10 plus years ago, right? And so that's definitely a thing.
It's still not.
Now that's part of the it's to your point, Dave. It's a great point, right? That's part of this remediation thing.
Yeah.
It's just going like, yeah, you could combine all these vulnerabilities together to like do really bad things as an attacker, but like as a defender, I just need to know, like, I need to go to the latest version of the software, right? I need to jump from where I am now to the latest version, or a version several steps ahead of where I am. And I wipe out a whole bunch of attack surface.
Yeah.
Correct.
But like knowing where those points are in your network today is kind of, it's still, I think, kind of hard. I don't know. Maybe someone could say no, that's baked into a VM management program or whatever. But I don't know.
So it's still very much an art form, in that everybody does it differently and some significantly
agree.
better than others.
That's what Wade and Jay said is, because I asked them that. I'm like, how are people doing? And they're like,
It's
like
all over the place.
it's custom thing.
And I mean, there's a few things in the cybersecurity that are security adjacent type tasks that we do as a reflexive motion. We do it as because we have to. And I would argue that those are the areas that are ripest for improvement, because we just go, oh man, I have 10,000 vulnerabilities to figure out how to get through. And then it's super traumatic, and you work the weekend and you get through it, and you don't necessarily apply a ton of strategy to it each and every time in order to shorten that, because you have other things that you need to be doing. So I think it's often a thing that gets overlooked because it's such a chore.
I agree. I have a couple of things that tie together in my stories. This was one that I think kind of goes together with a theme on some of the IoT stuff. But Netgear was one of them. And I think people kind of downplay some of these IoT commodity end user consumer things, but that translates to your enterprise in how you manage software and vulnerabilities as well. Because I see both the same attack techniques and attackers exploiting certain things, and I see the same kind of missteps in communication, both on from the vendors that are making consumer products as well as enterprise products. So Netgear was interesting. Netgear, I believe, is doing the right thing, and this is one where I've when I tell this story, like I'm the one lifting the covers on some Netgear routers, and I'm not the only one, and largely because Netgear has a bug bounty program through BugCrowd,
Yeah.
and I want to applaud them because I've done the research, and I've talked to a few folks about Casey Ellis. I think publicly we talked about some of this stuff as well, not specifically, but like the percentage of bug bounties on particular platforms like BugCrowd for firmware versus not firmware. Right, Netgear is like one of the few that have not just a bug bounty program, but like a really good bug bounty program through BugCrowd, right? And those of you that know me know that Casey and I are friends, and I applaud BugCrowd. I think it's a great company. They're doing great stuff there, right? And I hope Casey is doing well. He put it on social media. He was having some surgery, and so Casey, I hope you're doing well. And I stand behind my statement of I really want to see your scar when you're all healed up and all is said and done. I hope everything went well. And my other comment on that, I don't know if you guys caught this, but I told Casey, I'm like, hey man, I'm rooting for you. And I'm like, also, that's a really great company slogan, and you can use that, and you're welcome. So
Especially for a red team org.
right, yeah, it's awesome. So Netgear's trying to do the right thing. They got a bug bounty program that incorporates firmware. They're like, go look at our firmware and go through BugCrowd and submit a thing, and they've got, I want to say, over 1,000 submissions.
Wow.
I looked at their program like in depth today for this story. They've got over 1,000 submissions. Many are privately reported. Some are from people that I recognize that actually I want to bring on the show that have reported vulnerabilities through this bug bounty program. And I think I want to see the D-Links, Netgears, Links, all the vendors that have firmware be part of some bug bounty program, not necessarily BugCrowd, but sure, do BugCrowd because I think it's a great program, right? And Netgear seems to be doing really well with it. I also think that's why we're seeing a lot of vulnerabilities get patched in Netgear devices because they're responding to the bug bounty program. So I took some of their firmware from Netgear as part of a current project that I'm working on, and I ran it through some open source tools, specifically Emba, to look for vulnerabilities in their firmware. And a little bit of troubling. I mean, it's Linux kernel 4.x under the covers, which and also a lot of other software that has vulnerabilities, open source software that has vulnerabilities.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of that open source software also has publicly available exploits for it as well. So got some work to do there after I lifted up the covers. But again, like, no knock on Netgear or Bug Crowd. Like, you've got a bug bounty program and people are reporting the things, so let's get them fixed. But my thing that is uncomfortable when I looked at this, so like I've got a unique perspective because I was actually looking at the firmware that was part of this recent disclosure, right? And by looking at it, I mean, like, I ran it through Emba. Like, anyone can go get Netgear's firmware and anyone can go run it through Emba. If you haven't looked at Emba, it's a firmware analysis toolkit. It's awesome. The folks that developed it are awesome. I wrote an article about it for Eclipsium. We use it internally, and I think a lot of other people are using it. It's a great project. So, like, again, anyone, Emba's open source. This firmware is part of a bug bounty program. Netgear makes the firmware available. You can go run it through Emba. Like, anyone can do this. Like, I'm not unique in this, right? But
Mm-hmm.
my nitpicky thing is there's not a lot of details on what has been fixed. And this is with a firmware that, like, I recently ran through Emba, and Netgear comes out in 4 different vulnerabilities for the, I forget which one. It was the XR1000 platform from Netgear, is one of their, like, Wi-Fi router kind of things. And so they released the vulnerability and they say Netgear has released fixes for a stored cross-site scripting security vulnerability. That's all I said.
Mm-hmm.
Now, go back to our previous story. They didn't say whether it was pre-authentication or post-authentication. Like, that's a big deal to me, right?
Mhm.
I mean, as a user, you should update the firmware regardless. But when we're looking at this, and we have to make recommendations to others, which, again, Netgear is making firmware for consumers, not necessarily enterprises, whatever. Just saying that we released a fix for a stored cross-site scripting vulnerability, you haven't told me whether it's pre or post authentication. Then they say we released a fix for a post authentication command injection security vulnerability. Well, holy crap. The one that existed in Sonicwall could totally exist in this Netgear router,
Mhm.
right? So, like, it doesn't even matter the first one, 2023-0122. If that's a pre-authentication cross-site scripting vulnerability, stored cross-site scripting, that same device has a post-authentication command injection vulnerability. Attackers can do the same thing that they did with Sonicwall, right? Then they say we released fixes for a security misconfiguration security vulnerability. That's the only details that are provided. I don't even know what does that mean? What does that even mean?
I don't know.
What does that mean?
It reminds me of
we could speculate on what that could mean, but what does that mean?
It reminds me of when you update an app and it says, you look at what
security
changed,
fixes,
and it says security fixes and performance improvements, and you're like, okay, that's
Yeah.
And then the last one is release a fix for authentication bypass security vulnerability, 2023-0113.
Mm-hmm.
Is that pre or post auth? Because that's a huge difference. Now, granted, in this context, for a consumer-based router, you should just be putting the latest firmware on there. In
Yeah.
fact, it should be automated at that point. In
Yeah.
fact, a lot of regulations that are floating around now, Josh, Lee, correct me if I'm wrong, talk about automated firmware updates, right, for devices that are critical. There's a lot of regulations
There are some
either explicitly
regulatory
say that or
implications.
right
Yeah.
recommend that.
Well, the thing
So
is,
you
the
should be just
regulations finally got to the point that they're including OT, they're including firmware, they're including IoT, they're including all the different pieces that everyone's like, oh, before was like, oh, what's the big deal? There's nothing you can really do about it. No, you can do stuff about
there's
it.
EU regulations that are saying firmware updates should be automated, right? They should be part of your regular process. If you want this to be able to buy this device, you in this country, you should be able, the manufacturer has to provide a mechanism to automatically update firmware. So, given that, the lack of details shouldn't matter because you should be just applying the latest firmware update. But as we all know, firmware updates are kind of dicey, could break the device, it could impact functionality. Again, in a consumer environment, not as important maybe as an enterprise environment that could impact hundreds of thousands or millions of users, right? But I think what I take away from this is we need better vulnerability reporting standards. If you're going to report on a vulnerability, we should have enough context to be able to make a decision.
Well, tell me what to hunt for. You
An
just told me there's
informed
something out there,
consumer?
but what?
But the flip side of that
That's
is
crazy talk.
they could tip the hand to the attacker and give them enough information. But also, you could also download their firmware and then do diffs and see what changed between them and reverse engineer the patch out of it.
Look, Virus Total is one of the best tools for a malware writer known to mankind.
Right.
Okay? Like everything we build for us is also built for them,
Mhm.
which it's just the
Right.
way it is. All we have to do is make sure that we're using it effectively. So,
But then that segues into my story number 14, because I think what all this leads to, right? We covered Sonicwall and Netgear. And again, I'm not picking on the manufacturers. Every single
you are.
device, I'm not, because every single device manufacturer, we're doing the show almost 20 years, every single device manufacturer has had some kind of vulnerability or string of vulnerabilities, right? It's just that no one is unique
Right.
in that. But what a lot of this leads to is the Mirai DDoS attack. If you dig into that, they're
Mhm.
targeting 22 different known vulnerabilities now with a whole host of manufacturers and building C2 channels and building out the Mirai botnet. So like I can speculate and say, I think these vulnerabilities are going to be used in the Mirai botnet. My story number 14 goes, we observe some stuff and Mirai is targeting these vulnerabilities. Now I haven't done like the precise or kind of tedious research to go, is things in Sonicwall and Netgear that I just talked about in the list of things that are being targeted by Mirai? I don't know exactly, but it's very telling that we've seen in previous weeks D-Link, Netgear, Sonicwall, and now the article that points to Mirai basically exploiting 22 like different now known vulnerabilities, like new ones. So it's adding that capability to build out the Mirai botnet.
Well, what about abandoned IoT devices?
Well,
in
that's
this
the deal.
case?
That's the D-Link
Like-
problem. Yes,
Mhm.
there has been several
Yeah.
exploits, which I could probably have just a list that I provide you, Dave, to go look. These are ones where there's a vulnerability, there's a published exploit and or known exploit of some capacity, and it's on a D-Link device that has been end of life and they're
Yeah.
not issuing a fix.
It's never going to get
Absolutely.
fixed.
And that's why they're getting added to Mirai, because Mirai, like attackers are like, oh, and Mirai's guy source code was open years ago,
Yeah.
and I can just go ahead and add it in.
I sat on a talk at Hope, and they were basically talking about that. It was a panel, and they were talking about the various effects of abandonware. So things that they're end of life, they're not getting patched, so now they're a security risk. They're also, and you have to make the determination for your organization as to whether you're going to spend the money, rip and replace all this hardware, send it to the dump, and now we're not doing the planet any favors with that, and then and then add the new thing, or if you're going to ride it out and accept the responsibility and the risk and add compensating controls to it.
Mhm.
It's
But
not
that
a
goes
good
to
spot.
and I've thought about this, and this is my story number 2: reverse engineering an IP camera. So all these tie together. I apologize; these are very IoT specific, and we'll get off this soon.
Well,
But
that's cool.
my story number 2, reverse engineering an IP camera, is a security researcher named Alex who looked at the security of this like no name brand IP camera,
Mhm.
reverse engineered the firmware update process and the encryption process. Like this is totally fascinating. Like how he did
Awesome.
this. Like I can't even do the details justice. Like you got to go read the article and basically figured out how to take a custom firmware that he had and then encrypt it in such a way and then subvert the process of firmware update to put his own firmware on the device. And so this is my train of thought, that rather than throwing all this stuff away, what if I can create open or custom firmware for it so I can continue to use it and wipe out the security vulnerabilities that existed before? Like if a manufacturer is going to go, that's end of life, most people are going to be like, well, I'm just going to throw it away. The hacker in us is going to go, how can I put different software on it that still provides the same level of functionality, but just doesn't contain the the vulnerabilities that were there, and I continue to use the device. Like,
Yeah.
so many of these devices, as all of us well know, they're not old, and some of them are old and slow, but maybe there's still a purpose for them. But a lot of newer devices, quite frankly, would still be totally fine.
Yeah.
We talked about our Kotom firewalls. When did I run the segment on that? God, it's got to be 6 years ago. And I still, with a gigabit connection to the internet, through those same firewalls, I still get 900 up and down. So, like, do I need to replace that hardware?
Well, I mean, it is Prime Day, so yes.
Well,
Of course.
you know, Prime Day, I spent $186 for something new to replace them, but whatever. It's still, they're still functional. They're still capable of pushing out gigabit internet connection. So
Are they still getting updates?
yes.
Then then it's really just it's a you problem.
The problem with that is that's a whole different animal. But
I mean,
I didn't apply updates for a while, and so this is technical debt. The longer you wait to apply the update, the more work it is to apply the update.
Yeah.
And then it's a day or half a day to go, oh god, back the thing on, I gotta upgrade it, and then hope it works, and then it doesn't work, and then you're almost better at that point wiping the slate clean, but then there's a lot of custom config on it. It's technical debt at that point.
Yeah.
But I believe they are capable of running the latest version of software. And again, they still push 900 up and 900 down internet, and they're 6-year-old at least devices.
This sounds like a personal itch. I would recommend maybe throwing a coat of paint on it. That might help.
Yeah.
Might
Maybe a little
refresh the
lipstick.
thing. Yeah. One of Jeff
Boink,
Mann's
I think
boink.
what
new
we need is a
stickers.
3D printed head of the dude from Mr.
This is
Robot
the worst segue.
that we super glue on top of the
Here.
heatsink device. Yeah,
Here, you
see,
can do the
here's-
honors.
Thank you. I can just pluck it right out. It just comes right off. There's like little stringy things hanging from it. And then I got to remove the, what did you call the
Supports.
Supports.
Yeah, just pull
it's
them right off.
literally just supports. I don't. These supports are harder to get off than the other
Here.
one. Yeah, I'm gonna let you do that because I don't want to break it.
It's okay. The fingers of experience, right there.
Look at that. You even hesitate.
I'm sorry. What did you just say?
The fingers of experience. Are you not aware?
No comment.
Of pulling off supports on 3D printed?
It actually came out really good.
I think it did too.
There you go.
I need one of me now.
I mean, throw it
And
on Hacker
Josh
Chest.
and Lee and all of the other Security Weekly hosts, and then I can like have something that I rest. Can you print something that's like rest on the top of my laptop? So every time I do a show, all of the Security Weekly hosts, I wouldn't even face them towards the audience. I'd face them towards me, so they're all looking at me while I do the show.
That'd be
That-
freaking awesome.
And then you could collect them. Like, you can do multiple colors. You can actually like match skin tones, give them eyes for that matter. So I don't know if you really
Hell
want to
yeah,
do it,
I want that.
you can do it.
Anyway, what were we talking about? Technical debt. Yeah.
Technical debt.
Sorry, I've done a lot of talking. Someone else has been talking.
It's all good.
Lee, take a story. Come on.
Oh, actually, it's one. Both Paul and I had a couple in common. His number 18, I forgot my number. The Exim vulnerability, where you can bypass.
Oh yeah, nasty.
Yes.
If you've set up
Good
extension filtering in your Exim instance, you can. It's possible to override it because they don't check the full file name. They don't check the last bit. So you could overload it and get your file through. I mean, what the hell, right? Why not? Apparently, Exim is really popular as an MTA.
Who's using Exim to do that level? Who's relying on Exim for that level of filtering?
Affecting 1.5 million servers. So apparently a lot of people.
Yeah,
but there's
who's using?
But I think there's 1.5 million Exim servers because that's the default in Debian.
Right. So, but how many in that 1.5 million are using the MIME file name filter?
Right.
It's my number 10. That's
It's
the
my
question
number
of
18,
because there is no workaround. You have to update it.
Right.
But I'm kind of going. Wait a minute.
But also, how many folks are using Exim as one of their MTAs, but also have some other level of filtering? Conceivably, you could be using Exim as your MTA, and then be using some other email protection service, like, I don't know,
Proofpoint.
Proofpoint.
Abnormal.
Thank you. Like, what was the other one? It's a Boston-based company.
That's not Abnormal, I don't think.
No,
Mimecast.
Mimecast. Thank you. That was the one I was thinking of. Right. Like, so you could have this vulnerability and go, I haven't enabled this feature in Exim because my mail flows upstream to someone else that's doing the thing, and that you're just hoping that they're not, like, whoever you're paying a lot of money for that service. Right? I would say, like, a lot of money is that's just an off the cuff comment, but you're paying money to another service. Like, let's hope that that other service is just not relying on Exim's filtering as part of their solution, right? You know where I'm going with this.
Yeah. But and
hopefully it's more robust than that.
Yeah.
But also, like, why hasn't Debian, like, why is Debian still using Exim? Why hasn't Debian gotten rid of the default MTA? Because it's their default MTA, and it has been since the beginning of time, as far as I remember. Why haven't they replaced it with something like Qmail, who's DJB, and Postfix? Anyone who wrote Postfix?
Hey, they're not using SendMail.
Vitsa Venom. He was on the show. Vitsa Veneman. Yeah. So there's both Qmail and Postfix have very prolific, extremely smart people who wrote those mail MTAs essentially because SendMail was so crappy in terms of security, right? But yet Debian still goes where Exim is the default. So, like, serious question: why haven't Linux distributions like Debian standardized on something where the developers have basically, like, rewritten the MTA because the other ones were so insecure? And that's the quote from the Ars Technica article that I linked to in the I don't know if you linked to the Ars Technica article by Dan Gooden on this one, Lee. That's the one I linked to. The title is Exim Vulnerability Affecting 1.5 Million Servers Lets Attackers Attach Malicious Files. The first comment, and by first I mean the one that's most upvoted in, I don't know if you ever read the articles in Ars Technica. I don't know how we got to a point in the show when we're talking about comments on specifically Ars Technica articles, but I find them hilarious. And there's a lot of nuggets in there. And the comment that is most upvoted for this article states, if Debian would finally just throw in the towel and replace Exim as their default MTA, this kind of issue wouldn't be important enough to merit being a news story on Ars Technica.
Woo!
That is the best comment ever. At least this week. It's the best comment this week, Dave. Right?
So what actually I did is I linked to the census article, the folks that provide the updates for Exim, because it had the details, but the Ars article is a bit more fun.
Yeah. It's
particularly with that comment. Holy moly, that was cool.
Right? But it's, I mean, and people, but then people go back to, what I was talking about earlier, like, oh, all software has vulnerabilities. But still, but look at the history behind Qmail and Postfix. Like, literally really super smart people rewrote from scratch an MTA to deal with security issues. And I believe that's the ones we should be, not to say that they don't have vulnerabilities, because they probably do, but
I don't remember when I switched to Postfix, but it's been a while.
Right. And Postfix is good.
Yeah. Although I got some long ago history writing SendMail CFs before they had the macros, which made it easy.
Oh my God. Oh, don't.
Oh, sorry. Flashback.
Oh, God.
SendMail?
Don't.
Compiling SendMail.
Oh, yeah.
Oh.
No, this is before my time. You've hit
You
it.
never compiled X11R3 from
No.
source or R4?
I compiled SendMail from source on
Yes.
Solaris
Yeah.
and configured a SendMail CF, and it was, and also
Wait.
at a particular university that is of
Late 80s, early 90s.
a certain darker color here in Rhode Island, Dave. Tens of thousands of people were without email access because Paul messed up SendMail.
Whoops.
Just saying that happened.
So you have now some real world experience that sits on your resume.
Yes. Vitsa Venema, who was on the show with Dan Farmer on an episode in 2018-ish timeframe, by the way, wrote Postfix.
Okay, this
Cool.
interface is looking really familiar now.
Was that SendMail?
Yeah, I think I just didn't know what the heck it was called at the time, and I was
SendMail was like the MTA back in the day. Like when
Yeah.
Solaris was really popular, like SendMail on Solaris, I feel like was a thing for a long time.
like it was out when I was getting into this stuff, like
The
98.
Morris Worm
you know.
exploit SendMail? Was that one
Wasn't
of the
that the one
exploits
that
you had?
took out the debug option?
Oh, we should have, my bucket list. Probably tops of my bucket list email. My bucket list interview is Robert T. Morris.
The Morris worm?
Morris
Mhm.
Worm.
Yeah. That was the
real
send mail
person,
one,
though.
right?
The real person.
Yeah,
He is
not
the
the
person
worm.
that wrote the Morris Worm.
Yeah, no. Robert Tappan Morris.
Yep.
Let's see. So I just
Yeah, that was
stumbled
send
on-
mail.
It was SendMail.
Yeah, it was
that
SendMail.
just
I
one
was
of the expo. I thought there was multiple.
Well, it was basically
We should
taking
do like a whole segment on the Morris Worm.
Yeah.
That'd be so
because
interesting.
he took advantage of the debug that was left enabled.
I mean, Robert Morris is somewhat local. Like he was a professor. Is he still at MIT? He was at MIT.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if he's still there. I haven't looked in a while.
I mean, it would be really cool to dig up
Yep.
people who made some of these, like Creeper. If
Oh yeah, Creeper was a thing. Yes, I get the reference.
Melissa, I sat in on like a malware history segment last year at B-Sides Las Vegas, and it was definitely a trip down memory lane, but there were a few that I had not heard of, which was interesting just to see where we came from when we started with just like mostly just pranks, and now we're at ransomware, which is not a prank.
No.
Although I just a random aside, who should I 3D print next? Should it be Josh or should it be Bruce Schneier? Because Josh, I just downloaded you. Is that okay?
I
Does that
want to
make
see you try and
uncomfortable?
if you could 3D print Josh before we end
Did you
the show,
download me
dude,
from
I'll be really.
Thingiverse? Is
Yeah,
that damn
yeah.
chess set still there?
Yes, it is.
Oh, I want to see you 3D print Josh.
You have a
Jason's
hat on.
Yeah, it's all
Yeah, I have a
Josh.
hat on
Yeah,
and
he
that.
has a hat because that's how I know Josh and remember Josh is
Yeah.
from conferences when
That
Josh
is literally
you were the
How old is that?
auctioneer for Hackers for
2015.
Charity, and you would literally stand up like on a chair or a table
Yep.
at a I was thinking about this the other day because I think about
I did
all
this
of you.
at ShmooCon and DerbyCon every year for a decade. Do you
It's
know,
kind of
actually, I
creepy,
figured
but like
out-
I think about you guys like randomly throughout my day, and like I was
My job
thinking
here
about
is
you,
done.
Josh. I'm like, when did I first see Josh? I'm like, he would literally stand up at a table or a chair at a conference and do the Hackers for Charity auction.
Oh,
And I'm
I
like, then he
think
would talk to me and be really nice to me. And like, now we're friends and he's on my show. And
You're an
and
awesome
the
guy.
whole thing. Right. Yeah.
No, I figure that over the decade that I did that at DerbyCon and
Mhm.
ShmooCon, as well as a little bit of DEF CON here and there, I think we raised about $1 million for charity.
Wow, it was awesome.
That's amazing.
So awesome.
Oh, dude, you did it at DEF CON. And it was the DEF CON where I had a cardboard cutout of Larry naked holding a WT-54G.
I
He
was
was wearing
there.
the
His garage.
mankini. It was
You
not
were there.
naked.
I was there.
You were there. Dave was there. Yes, you were helping me with the booth that year.
Whoa.
What hotel was that at?
Was that the
We
Riv?
ran into who did we
Caesars?
run into from Hack 5? Olivia?
Darren?
Snubs?
Snubs.
Snubs.
I just remember running into Josh at conferences, and Josh and that hat of his were inseparable.
I still have it. I
Yes,
still
and
wear
you got
it.
the
I still
hat.
go
You
to-
always.
it was-
That's how I knew you, dude. I was
I'll
like,
start wearing the
I
hat.
don't even
okay?
think. I don't even think I knew your name. I just
No.
knew you as the dude
with the
with
hat.
the hat that would do the auction thing.
The dude with the hat with the big voice,
Yes,
who turns out to be a real
and you were
sweetheart. Oops, I
hilarious
shouldn't
when
admit
you did.
that.
You were hilarious when you did that. By the way.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I enjoy myself. You do know that what was interesting was the first thing I ever did really in the community was I was at DEF CON and the EFF was holding a dunk booth, and they had women in bikinis, hackers in bikinis on the dunk booth, and they weren't getting anybody to do anything. So I started I grabbed the mic. Literally, I'm like, "Give me the mic." They're like, okay. So I social engineered my way to run the dunking booth for the EFF, and I started abusing people. I'd be like, "This is the only way you're ever going to see a girl. That's why we put a plastic screen in front of her, because that's the way you're used to it."
Dude, it was amazing.
By the end of a
Okay.
couple of hours of that, they were paying $20 to dunk me. They're like, "Just get the bitch off, get him on," and nothing against her. They were so pissed off. They put me in the dunking booth, and they were paying $20 to just walk up and hit the damn thing. And I was like, "All right, fine, we're raising money."
Oh boy. Did we also, Lee? Did you and I both have the CISA's red team operations?
Yes, we did. That was an interesting one.
That was good. Did you read the whole thing?
No, I read a bunch. I skimmed through a bunch
Okay,
of it.
yeah. All right, I'm in the same. I didn't read the whole thing.
It was.
I want to. I think everyone should read the whole thing.
Yeah,
It's kind of a tedious read.
Yeah, but it's like.
But I think it's important. Yeah.
Well, they're using attacker techniques and platforms. I mean, they freaking got into their Solaris web server and
It
had
was
that.
adversary emulation.
That's
right?
it, adversary emulation. And then
And
they,
it was
then
almost
they
a
social
year. So it was
engineered
a red
credentials
team
for Windows.
operation. I wanted Jeff to talk about this, right? Because I could just
Yeah,
hear him
yeah.
asking questions about it. But it was almost a year-long, basically red team
Yes, it was.
exercise or what we would call adversary emulation. It kind of sounded like they targeted an agency, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
But they didn't say which. How did they phrased it a certain way? Like we could almost speculate.
Right.
Who
Well, I
they
got
were
hung up on
targeting.
there. No notice long-term simulation of nation-state cyber operations. I love that.
They said
Yes.
they called the operation Silent Shield because
Yes.
like all good,
Oh, I read this. Yeah.
all good operations within the U.S. federal government need some type of moniker or
Mhm.
name. What was the ones that Jeff were involved in or around the time? What was that called? Something football. Was the early red team operations from NSA against other? It was
he covered this and he
yeah,
said
Jeff.
Yeah.
Jeff knows all about it.
he literally said
he did some of them, but some of them also happened after Jeff left
Right.
the agency. It was this is why where is Jeff this week? We
I don't
needed
know.
Jeff for this,
I don't know.
for particularly this story.
in
Because,
By the
his
way,
talk, he literally
little-
said we don't need to take notes, and he lied.
yeah,
I should have
Little
taken
off
notes.
topic. Paul, I just emailed Robert Morris to see if he'll be a guest on the show.
dude, it is my
Awesome.
I don't want to leave this world until I sit down with Robert Morris. Like I'm
Well, then I
dead-
never
I'm
want
like,
him
I'm
on the show
serious
because I
about-
prefer you stay. But it's a detail.
I seriously,
Yeah.
dude. Like total bucket list.
I just found his email and emailed him. Let's see if it works.
Okay, Josh, I can print you in 15 minutes.
All right.
I had to print you at 3% scale, 3% size, because you were too big for the bed.
Honey, they always tell
That's
me
a
I'm too
common
big for the
problem
bed.
with Josh.
It was
so
life size.
That's
It
what
actually-
she said.
The file is life size.
Back to the CISA red team operations.
Oh.
Silent Shield
The
was a
CISA
red team assessment against a federal civilian executive branch organization.
Who
Correct.
didn't know it
Federal-
was happening.
That is my take. That a red team
that's-
implies they did not know it was happening.
Yeah, they're authorized to do these operations against any
Yeah.
government agency with no prior authorization, no notice, no nothing.
Right.
No notice, long-term simulation of nation-state cyber operations.
It's
Wow.
actually
Yes.
smart.
It's glorified.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
I think it's great.
And for the first phase, which was big, there was they didn't detect it. It's like they were in their
But it's not.
shorts.
And I listened to Gray Noise has a podcast,
Mhm.
and I love the folks at Gray Noise. I think they do great stuff, and I don't just say that about just anyone, obviously, right? But like, I think it's a great team over there, and I just caught wind of their podcast. And I think they're doing great things, and they were talking about this. So I want to give them a shout out, and because I listened to their discussion about this article, Lee, and that's where I gleaned. This is like, thank you, Gray Noise, because I didn't have to go read the whole thing. Like, your conversation about it was awesome. Thank you.
Mhm.
But they were basically like speculating: did they know? Did they not know? And then what I thought the folks at Gray Noise's observation was, and again, having skimmed this article and listened to their conversation, they said, the target, the Federal Civilian Executive Branch organization
Mhm.
of this exercise, they're like, they had a lot of the pieces to have a really great security program, but fell short of the mark
Right.
by like kind of the way they described it, if you were to look at it in terms of percentages, right? Like they were like 85% there.
Right.
And if you are a nation state attacker, or this team from CISA emulates a nation state attacker, you're a skilled attacker, you can prey on that 15% and have great success,
Yeah.
because that 15% of like what they were missing didn't allow teams to communicate and collaborate well. They weren't able to put logs together in a way that allowed them to paint the picture of exactly what was happening. This is like so many organizations. I don't want to pick on whoever the target was, because this is so many organizations. Like, they were kind of almost there, right? And it doesn't
So,
mean there weren't people there trying to make that organization secure, because they were, but they were just missing that mark. And that was really the takeaway for me, Lee. I'm
right.
curious to
But
get your thoughts, though.
what's really cool about this engagement is phase 2. Phase 1 was the adversary emulation, and yeah, they were missed the mark on some of their security measures. Phase 2 was collaborate with the agency and fix it.
Mm.
All right. So they didn't just, eat their lunch. Then they helped them get their act together, which is like
Yeah, no,
really
that's
cool.
right. That's awesome.
This is
Yeah.
actually like the right way. I got to give them a lot of credit.
Yeah.
You don't know you're getting hit. All of a sudden, somebody shows up at your door, is like, hey, by the way, we have all your data.
Right.
But the fact that they were 80, and I'm just, again, these are
Yeah.
numbers that I'm just pulling out of thin air, right?
Right.
But
Right.
the fact that they're 85% there, I think makes it easier to go, here's the things you can do to like really shore things up. If they
Mhm.
were only 50% of the way there, I mean, basically this effort would have been like kind of wasted, in my opinion.
Mhm.
Right? The fact that this organization was like almost there, we can help them get to the 85% all the way up to like that. You're never 100%.
No,
We
no
can
such
help them
thing.
get into like the high 90th
Yeah.
percentile of like, okay, we would detect most of those attacks now, right? Like
Yeah.
that leap is not as great as if they were to issue this report and go, oh yeah, it was way too easy, or they were only 40%, 50% of the way there, right?
And often they're aware of it. Like I've definitely spoken to quite a few people over the years that just are not ready for a pen test yet. They're
Yeah.
like, hey,
No, they're not.
it wouldn't
Ready
be
for
worth it at all.
what
Just
type
yet.
of pen test? There's
Yeah.
a scale of like, what level pen test are you ready for? In
Yeah.
my mind, they were ready for this level pen test, because I think it's going to help this organization go from 85% to 98%, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's really all you can ask for. But the thing that stuck out for me is in the lessons learned that they summarize in the top of the article.
Mhm.
The one that I think is telling to me is bureaucratic processes and decentralized teams hindered the organization's network defenders.
Yes.
If I had to pick, Lee, you're backing me up on this, right? If I had to
Yes,
pick
I am.
one thing, right, that is just so telling, it would be that thing. Because when I ask people like Tyler and other like really super experienced red teamers that are going after very secure, security maturity wise, high on the scale organizations, which I
Right.
would classify this organization they were targeting, right? You're
Mhm.
high in the security maturity curve. The one thing that separates the wheat from the chaff, if you will, is the ability for that organization to communicate, to act, and to operate as a team red teamers and pen testers tell me those are the most toughest organizations that are just a well-oiled machine. They may not have like the best technology. They may not have like the best detection mechanisms or whatever, but
They know
their
their
skill,
shit. They
their
know their
skill, not only
systems.
do they, but it's two things, Josh. They know their shit and they communicate well, right? And you can't have one without the other and be as
Right.
effective. But if you
And
know your shit and you can communicate well as a team,
Mhm.
attackers are going to have a really rough time.
hey,
Again,
this looks weird. Okay,
right.
let me come over and take a look at it. That's my
Your
system.
tech stack can
Oh,
be kind of like, it can't be like total shit, right? But like your tech stack can be whatever. But if you like your people know their shit and they can really communicate and work as a team well, good lord, that's a really hard. When and take that back to when we used to do CCDC, right? The teams that the collegiate, so
Right.
students in college form a team and have to defend themselves against like red teamers that have 20 years experience, 10 to 20 years experience or more, right? You put together a team of folks in college that have to defend a network that they just stood up the day before. The teams that come out on top, they're not necessarily the most technical. Yes, they have some technical expertise. The teams that win are the teams that are awesome at teamwork, right?
Yeah.
They've got some technical chops. That's part of it,
they
right?
talk
Mhm.
back
They've
and
done their
forth.
research. They've worked hard. I'm not saying they were born with technical chops, but they have worked hard to learn as much as they can. And that's one thing. And the second thing is they're able to operate as a team. And the
Mhm.
teams that come out on top in CCDC, I guarantee you, if you interview any one of those teams and the red teams that have attacked them, they're going to say they worked really well together and they applied their knowledge, right?
I want to. I could like that. This is so freaking important. I actually want to hit this one more time. Like, if you want to be effective in infosec, you need to be able to communicate. You need to be able
Yes.
to talk business to the business.
Yes.
You need to be
Yeah.
able to talk technology to the technologists. You need to be able to talk to your peers in a language and a level and a tone that they can understand and appreciate and utilize. If you can have a team of red teamers or blue teamers or incident responders or digital forensics, or it doesn't friggin' matter, but if they work together and talk together and communicate and go, I don't, and there's no ego. Hey, I don't know how to do
Right.
this. Somebody will come over and go, no problem. Let me show you how.
Leadership is a lack of ego. And I think a lot of people look at leadership as a prominent figure that's going to dictate things to a team.
No,
That is not leadership,
no.
right? Leadership
Yeah.
is understanding what everyone else is going through, being able to work together as a team, recognizing strengths and weaknesses, not just in your team members, but in yourself as well,
It's
right?
actually, it's
like
funny.
great
Narcissist,
leadership is,
toxic jackasses get leadership positions because they're like, I will kiss ass
dude,
up and I will beat down
but they're
and
the
I will
most
get my
ineffective leaders.
well,
Yes.
yes, but they get the leadership positions because the people that are like, I'm just trying to help my friends and peers and
Right.
colleagues are not the ones that are like, promotion, promotion, promotion.
So
But
true.
when you get the right person in a leadership position, when you get the one that's there, hey, let's move forward as a team. Let's get to that goal. I got your back. I am your shit shield.
Mhm.
I'll deal with the politics. You guys get the stuff done. Holy crap, those teams are effective.
Yeah, especially
Yeah.
when they're not micromanaging, because then the entire team is limited by their imagination and skill versus you hired these technically capable people who have a skill set that you
Let them
need.
go.
Let them do,
Right.
yeah, let them do what they do best and help, like you said, shield them from shit and remove obstacles from their way. And then you will have adding communication to that. I have a project that it's been in the works for a little while. I need to make some forward motion on it, but thank you for reminding me of it. Communicating that to the rest of the business is also key, because otherwise
Yes.
then you're shielding them
Yes.
from shit that the team is generating that the rest of the business doesn't understand, and now you have a marketing problem.
It's interesting though that we're talking about like totally non-technical things
It's
that
extremely
lead to
technical
like
things.
great organizations and great security programs. But what I've noticed recently is it can't be superficial, because now in the day and age of the internet and AI and all that stuff, you can consume a lot of information and superficially try and be a great leader. And I don't want to, I'm not trying to toot my own horn, but like sometimes I spot it from a mile away. And
Yeah.
I spotted from a mile away where people that just like overly use the "I appreciate you," and I'm like,
No.
hold on, like you can't just go like consume some content and then just verbally say like "I appreciate you," and like
Yeah.
think
No.
that you're a great leader. Like you haven't, like, you read the cliff notes and just tried to like regurgitate certain phrases. I'm like, that's not a great leader. Like, the great leadership is something you have to like embody. It's
Yeah.
not just like a superficial thing where like,
It's
oh, well, I tell my team all the time I appreciate them. I'm like, just you verbal, like, you saying it is one thing, but if you truly appreciate your team, you're going to show that in actions and in other ways. And so, like, a lot of what we're talking about can't just be done superficially.
No.
Like, it has to be done, and it's hard
you
work
gotta live it.
to get there. You
Yeah.
got, yes, you have to embody it, and you got to live it
You can
in every day.
you can tell the team that you appreciate it, but I find it's more a case of you're telling them, we want to get here. I heard about this way to get here, but now what's the right way to do this? And they may come up with something completely different, but you acknowledge that they're the SMEs and let them
But
roll.
that's
I
a
mean,
great
get the hell out
leadership
of their
trait,
way.
right? Is
Right.
making people feel like they're important, valuing people's
Yeah.
opinion, and doing that on a daily
Little
basis means so
humility.
much more, Lee. It tells me you understand leadership, right?
It's
right.
not
It
making
means
them
so much more
feel.
than regurgitating and saying, I appreciate, right?
It's not making them
It's
feel they're important. It's understanding how they're important. If you've got someone
Yeah,
on your
right.
team that isn't
absolutely.
important in something, they're either the intern or they're on their way out.
Yeah. The only wrinkle in the communication you said started us on, Josh, is huge. And the only thing
Monstrous.
I'm seeing lately that it gets under me is the I don't want to pick up the phone and call somebody thing, or
Yeah, yeah.
they limit their communication choices. I get it.
You got to
Certain
engage.
generations picking up the phone is not good, but you got to be flexible because you're dealing with a diverse set of team.
Yeah,
Different.
but Lee, you're spot on. Some of the greatest leaders I worked for, one of the things they would do is just pick up the phone and be like, "Nah, how you doing?" Right? Like, hey, like, how things going? What can I do
Yeah.
to make your life better? Right?
And
Or
Slack and Teams are the modern equivalent. Just hey,
yes,
what's going on, man? How are you?
but a phone
Everything
call,
cool?
to Lee's point though, a phone call is.
Oh yeah.
I just
But
want to. I just want to call out Ron Gula. Right? Was
Mhm.
an amazing leader. One of the amazing leaders I worked for. One of the amazing leaders at Tenable that I worked for. But they would just pick up the phone and call.
Yeah.
Right? And be like, hey, how's things going? Right?
Yeah.
That's and
And
not a lot of people do that today.
yeah,
Right?
and
Because of all the different Speaking of communication, I want to tie it to my story number 16.
okay.
I thought this was one of the arguably one of the best articles I've read about vulnerability disclosure. And good Lord, I've read a lot and talked to a lot of people about it. And this comes from the 0 Day Initiative. Dustin Childs wrote this article. Probably one of the best articles, certainly one of the best articles this week, opinion pieces I've read this week.
oh my
Mhm.
god,
And
the second line in this is brilliant. You've got to read it, Paul. You've got to read the second line to people.
dude, like, this is just so loaded in quotes and unbelievable. Like, Dustin hit a grand slam with this article. We're reaching out to Dustin to bring him on the show as a result of this article. So, Dustin, if you're listening, or if you know Dustin, like, dude, based on this article, you need to come on the show because we want to chat with you, because you wrote an amazing piece. You said what I think all of us are thinking who work in or with security researchers, right? What was the
Eloquently.
second? So we at Trend Micro 0 Day Initiative agree with them because that's what we told them back in May when we detected this exploit in the wild and reported it to Microsoft. So Microsoft released an update for CVE 2024-38112, which they said was being exploited in the wild, right? And Dustin says, well, yeah, that's what we told them back in May.
Mhm.
And it goes on to give several examples of how vendors say, we want to work with security researchers, right? We want coordinated vulnerability disclosure. And I'm not picking on Microsoft or any particular vendor because there's many mentioned in here, but what many vendors mean by coordinated vulnerability disclosure, or CVD, is, hey, researcher, tell me everything that you know. And then we as a vendor are going to disseminate to you and the public whatever we feel like, and at whatever time we feel like, and however we feel like, and whenever we feel like. And it's not a two-way street. Communication is a two-way street. If you're in any kind of a relationship, if you're married and you have a spouse, if you work for an employer and you have a manager, right? Whatever the situation is, you have friends. Communication's a two-way street, except somehow when we get to many instances in coordinated disclosure where the security researchers are expected to disclose everything that we know privately to the vendor and then leave it up to the vendor to disclose or not disclose that information at their discretion. That is not coordinated vulnerability disclosure. There is no coordination there. That is basically extortion of the security researcher's knowledge to the vendor and then leaving it up to them with what they want to do. And I thought the quote from me, Josh, that I thought that absolutely, and I said this to our researchers at Eclipsium, right?
Okay.
Because so many times we've been in this particular situation in various facets. And Dustin says, vendors want researchers to trust them, but they aren't taking the necessary steps to earn our trust. What's sad is that we aren't asking for a lot as security researchers. Tell us that you've received the report. Confirm or deny our findings. Tell us when a patch is coming. Acknowledge us appropriately. Spell our name right. And finally, once the patch is available, tell us where we can find it. Strangely, one of the biggest problems we have at the Zero Day Initiative is getting vendors to tell us when something is fixed. That's coordinated disclosure. When we as security researchers go, here is a vulnerability.
Yeah.
And what we're expecting in return is we acknowledge it. We have developed a patch for it. Here's when the patch is going to be released. And here's where you can find the patch. That's not a lot to ask, in my opinion.
All they have to do is put it, tag your information to the project ticket or add it to your CMS, whatever you're using to keep track of this. It's not that hard.
No.
You had to put way more effort in to fix it than you have to like track the person who disclosed it.
Now, Microsoft did respond, and I don't want to knock Microsoft in this context because Microsoft has, go back to our interview with Jared DeMont. Like, I don't think Microsoft is malicious in this process. I think Microsoft suffers from just being a friggin' large company. If you had to manage a company the size of Microsoft, stuff like this would happen, right? And Microsoft did respond and say, yes, sorry, we messed up in some of these cases, and we're always working to get better, and we apologize and that kind of thing. And again, it's hard when you have software and vulnerabilities at the scale that Microsoft does to get it right 100% of the time. And so in defense of the vendors, I work for a vendor. We produce software, right? Like we all live in glass houses. Again, I don't know, like start throwing stones at people because this stuff can be hard. But Microsoft has the problem like at huge scale.
Yeah.
And so we got to be like, but also they need to realize that these fringe cases are hurting their reputation, and they need to be able to respond to researchers basically 100% of the time within the right way. And when they mess up, everyone's going to notice, kind of thing.
Do you think that maybe that problem influenced their decision to get rid of Internet Explorer?
Well, I mean, they got rid of it, but apparently you can still exploit it. Is that what you're referring to?
There's
No,
still
like it's
remnants.
Edge now,
No, but one of my stories, I don't know if I wrote this one up, but I did put it in my stories. There was I don't know if this is what you're referring to, Dave, but there was a thing where attackers were able to go after disabled Internet Explorer and exploit a vulnerability and get code execution
Of course.
on the systems. I'm not sure if that's what you're referring to.
No, I was
but,
just talking about that. It reminds me of like WMI server when you turn it off and people like us can just turn it back on again.
I flagged that somewhere in there. I did. I read an article about
It's your story number 1.
Is it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And,
thank you.
I mean,
Void Banshee is a
wait, so it's
APT
still there?
APT group.
oh yeah, there's still
Yep. Oh, it's
Internet Explorer
even-
emulation mode still there.
in Edge. Is that because the
Yeah.
screenshot I saw was they were actually calling Edge, but calling out the HTA functionality. Right? It was like a package thing, blah blah blah.
It's
But
IE mode for Edge, which has got some,
Yes.
but operates inside an Edge sandbox.
And even though it was disabled, they were able to exploit it.
Can you escape that sandbox relatively easily because it's Internet Explorer and did they
Well,
talk
it's
about-
the sandbox is built in Edge, aka Chromium, so I'm
Yeah.
thinking not, but that's a dangerous assumption.
Well, you've just inserted Internet Explorer into something else. You just created
I know. It's exactly
So-
why
so
I'm kind of sitting here
Microsoft-
being wishy-washy because I'm going,
Microsoft MHTML MIME encapsulation of aggregate HTML documents protocol,
Damn it,
which was
Dave.
able to access Windows system disabled Internet Explorer.
because
Right.
the libraries are still there's a set of libraries or DLLs in Edge that are the IE functionality, and I suspect
Internet
they're the
Explorer has
same.
officially ended support on June 15, 2022. Disabled in Windows versions of Windows 10 and all versions of Windows 11. Disabled, however, does not mean IE was removed from the system. Remnants of IE exist on modern Windows systems, though it is not accessible to the average user. However,
Mhm.
the attackers figured out a way. It's in this article. It's in my story number 1. It was Trend Micro's post.
Mhm.
IE mode for Edge contains some IE specific functionality, but operates inside the Microsoft Edge sandbox, which in theory provides enhanced security for the end user.
in theory.
But attackers were able to get around that. Yeah.
Okay.
So they were able to access and run HTML application files or HTAs directly through the disabled IE process. This method of exploitation is similar to 2021 40444, if you're familiar with that particular vulnerability. Another MS HTML vulnerability that was used in zero-day attacks. Yeah. Crazy, dude.
This is just shadow IT you thought was gone now at this
It's-
point. Like
I mean, it's crazy if you're, good Lord, you're managing a huge Windows environment and
I am so glad
you're
I
like,
don't
I
ever
thought
have
I
to
was
do
done
that.
with the Internet Explorer, but it's still there. And but this is the Microsoft problem,
Yeah.
right? Which is they have to support a bunch of legacy stuff as well.
No, they don't. They could
Yeah.
just turn it off. It's
They
fine.
could, but then they break a whole bunch of customer stuff. That's the problem. That's
The only
problem.
thing that can
It's-
make me happy from this moment forward is this very small 3D print of Josh.
What is that? Can I see that?
Here you go. Don't break him.
Wait,
oh
he's
is
very
that,
Josh,
delicate.
you're tiny.
He's very delicate.
Oh my god,
This is
it's
the
a
tiniest
tiny-
Josh Moore pet.
It's a Josh and it's tiny.
It's
very-
3%.
Oh, that's so
very-
cute.
It's very. I need a bigger Josh.
So I think the print time is for an actual size Josh.
Was this the is this like a pawn in the?
Yeah, it's for hacker chess.
So Josh is a pawn in the chess board.
what can
Or
I
you
say?
can make him.
He's not a king.
You can make him the
or
king.
a queen. I mean, I would.
It's good to be the.
Bitch.
I would pin him as a queen. But
good to be
you
the
know,
king.
I mean, you know.
It's
If
good
I were
be
to
the king.
slice, hold on. If I were to slice the actual size Josh, oh, it won't even let me. Hold
He
on.
said it wouldn't fit on the bed.
Yeah, so it won't fit on the bed, and it won't even attempt.
So that
to
was
slice
Jason
it.
Street using his first 3D scanner, and we were literally just standing there. He walks over, he starts scanning everybody. I'm like, "What are you doing?" He goes, "I'm making chess pieces." All right, cool. Go to town.
Oh, that's awesome.
That was now almost 10 years ago. Jesus Christ.
Yeah,
Life goes on. Life goes fast.
I'll figure out how to print an actual, and then what we can do, Josh, is when you're not in studio, we can just put a U there, and then it'll be like you're here.
Wire it with a Raspberry Pi so the voice comes out. That would be awesome. Okay.
One last
what would it
story.
say?
I did want to talk about. This one kind of scared me, to be honest with you. Like I should have just put this one kind of scared me. JFrog noticed that in their binary secret scanning, they prevented what might have been the worst supply chain attack you can imagine. And I just want to go on record as saying, as I agree, they found a token that was associated with GitHub that basically would have given administrator access to all of Python's, PyPy's, and Python Software Foundation's repository, supposedly making it possible to carry out an extreme, large-scale supply chain attack. One such attack would be hiding malicious code in CPython, which is a repository of some of the basic libraries which stand at the core of the Python programming language and compiled from the C code due to the popularity of Python. Inserting malicious code in that would eventually end up in Python's distributables could mean spreading your backdoor to tens of millions of machines worldwide. I agree with their assessment. This one's kind of scary. It's my story number 17. Like, they basically found this because JFrog has like the code scanning thing that looks for secrets, and they're like, they found this and they were like, oh shit. And then they notified the Python developers, and within 17 minutes they had revoked. I believe it was 17 minutes.
Wow.
They revoked that.
Oh.
And I tell you what, if they had not revoked that, knowing what I know about Python and having read this article, it would have been not even just a bad day. It would have been a bad time for like pretty much all of us. Like pretty much everyone.
Like all the things people were scared about happening during Y2K that never actually happened.
Kinda.
Similar kind of scale. Like if we had not caught the XZ backdoor, multiply that times 10, in my opinion.
So
it's just off the cuff, like, as bad as the XZ backdoor was, this Python secret leaking could have been a multiple times 10 or 20, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And the fact that it was like somebody just go, oh, let's take a look. It was almost random.
Right.
So
craziness.
Do they go into how long this was available in the article?
Sure. It might be in the article. I'm not sure. It's tough to say. It's tough to say.
They talked about how it got there.
The what could have happened is like an uncomfortable read. It's an uncomfortable read to think about. Basically backdooring anything Python related.
Yeah.
That's
every.
And then not everyone's talking. Like, no one's really talking about this. Like, how?
Yeah.
Like, does it need to be that bad for us to talk about it? Like, I feel like we needed to talk about this because, like, this could have been really bad. And
pretty
also,
bad,
like, thank you to the folks who are supporting Python to, like, respond to this so quickly.
This is like
we do have that going for us.
This is like
the folks supporting Python are hyper aware and like, oh shit, we're gonna take care of this, right? Like,
this is like a meteor passing by the Earth.
We dodged a bullet,
and somebody Superman got out.
We dodged
and
a bullet,
pushed the Earth just a little bit.
Yeah. If you don't believe us, go read the article because I'm telling you, like,
it's terrifying.
It is terrifying. Yeah. Well, not to end the show on a sad note.
It's a good bedtime.
We do have to end the show. We didn't get to every article, but you can check out the show notes, which are always available for all of our things. We put lots of articles in there for our show notes, so go check those out. Thank you, everyone, for listening and watching this edition of Fall Security Weekly. We will see you next time. Over and out.